Hi, I'm Ruud Hendriks. I'm a co-founder of Startupbootcamp Amsterdam and Startupbootcamp Global.
Okay, Ruud Hendriks, thank you for being with us with StartupJuncture. We are very delighted to have you here. Startupbootcamp is really focusing on getting the best brains, the best startup teams from around the world to the Netherlands.
Yeah.
But I would like to turn around the question and would like to know what would be interesting for investors. Would it be interesting in the first place for investors and other stakeholders in the startup community to have a look at what's happening in the Netherlands?
Yeah, I think the Netherlands and Amsterdam and Eindhoven especially is a vibrant country and those are vibrant cities. I think we have a very strong startup community. I think we have lots of advantages. I mean, take for instance the mere fact that from Schiphol Airport you can fly to 350 destinations directly, which is fantastic. I mean, most people in this country at least claim they understand English or speak English, and I think that helps as well. Labor wages are pretty affordable. We have lots of students that would like to become trainees, so I think many elements are there already. I think the Dutch government could help a little more by providing visas for brilliant people a little easier. Okay. It's very hard to get brilliant people from outside the EU to live in this country for longer than 3 months. Is that still the case?
Because I recently heard
there are lots of developments going on there, but it's still the case. And I'm sure that by the end of this year, with a bit of luck, things will have changed. But for the time being, that's still the case. And also fiscally, I think you now see a situation develop where many EU countries are actually competing with each other. Like in the UK, you've got the SACE and the ICE arrangements, where it's fiscally very interesting for a seed investor to invest in a startup because he can deduct his losses easily and is not taxed in the first year. I'd love to see such a situation in Amsterdam as well. On the other hand, you know, the really brilliant startups that we are looking for are basically eager to get clients, to use our network and to use our mentors, and that's where we really invest. We really want to make certain that we've got the best mentors. And you know, in order to become a mentor at Startupbootcamp, you have to go through a training session. Really? Okay. So we make certain that they don't ask that first question, can I see your business plan? And we really inform them what it's like to become a mentor. And every year we evaluate all the mentors with all the startups, and the 10% that doesn't perform or which or has the lowest scores of all are kindly requested to make some room for new mentors. So we refresh our mentor team every year, and we take 10% out and new ones come in.
Okay. And do you also see some interesting things happening from investors looking to what's happening at Startupbootcamp and the startup community in the Netherlands?
Yeah. I'm very happy to say that we have a rising level of interest from both Dutch investors as well as international investors. They're not actively looking for Dutch startups, they're just looking for very good startups, and so are we.
But maybe founded in the Netherlands.
Yeah. We accept startups incorporated in Delaware or in the UK or Dutch BVs. But we in Startupbootcamp really believe in the philosophy that founders really have to be totally dedicated and committed. And therefore, out of every class of 10 startups that we accelerate, we always try to have at least 7 or 8 international companies. And if we have more interesting Dutch companies than 2 or 3, we send them to our own branches outside the Netherlands. Because, you know, I used to be a DJ in my young days. I was working on board Radio Caroline. I was on board for 3 months and then back on land for 2 weeks. Pirate DJ on the high seas. And the interesting fact was that you know, there was nothing else to think about than DJing and reading the news and things like that. And it's a great way to learn a profession, and you're not distracted by children's parties, girlfriends or whatever. So yeah, it's maybe not the best part of your social life, but it's great to learn the trade and the profession, and that's what we're looking for here as well. I mean, when people come towards Amsterdam to live with us for basically 6 months, all the way from Australia or the Ukraine. I mean, that shows real dedication and drive, and that's what we're looking for. That's our most important, the most important element that we are looking for when someone applies.
Great. You see annually maybe 10,000 of startups.
Yeah.
You also just mentioned that most of them are also from abroad, so maybe the question, I don't know if you could still give an answer, but I was wondering from your point of view, which startups are that are founded in the Netherlands, so they don't have to be really Dutch, are going to disrupt a vertical market or maybe entire ecosystem? Do you already have some names for us?
Yeah, I think at least a few of them have the potential. Disruption, I mean, really disrupt a complete area of business is, I mean, that's
It's only for
that's
Google.
A big thing. There are a few of them there, but well, some, let's say, high potential startups. By far the most potential from our class of 2012. Are 3 startups, I think. First, Vusi. Secondly, Leeglas. Third, Local Sensor. And probably Flixfit as well. Okay. If you want me to go into their business, it'll take a while. But
why maybe in just?
Well, Vusi is basically bringing, let's say, all the online knowledge and the online cookies to the real world. I mean, with Vusi, you add a sensor to let's say, a shopping mall, and you can see how people behave in the mall, how people walk through a shop, why they stand in front of one dress and do not stand looking at another dress.
The Internet of Things, but then for the
so it gives you tremendous insight in consumer behavior in the retail industry, and I think that's going to change a lot. Secondly, Leeglas basically is making it very easy for anybody to create your own app, drag, drop, publish. Yeah. A Local Sensor basically makes really local advertising based on certain criteria that you can add yourself. Very, very easy. That's great. If I look at our class of 2013, iLost, I think, is really interesting. They would like to become the Google of lost and found.
In the last decade in the Netherlands and Europe at large, maybe there has been done tremendously. The startup scene is flourishing. And do you think we are right on track, and what still needs to be done, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think we're right on track, but I also think we're still way behind the startup community in the US. Mm-hmm. There's still a lot of work to do. Let's, for instance, take VCs. You know, VCs are all in there for the long term, while in practice they're usually there for the short term gains they can get, and they're very, very risk afraid. So they risk averse, I should say. Mm-hmm. So they are not used yet to really invest in startups at a very early stage. They prefer startups which are either cash flow positive or already really profitable. And there's still a lot of gains to be made over there. Also, angel investors are very inexperienced, usually, at least in this country. They're learning fast, but there's still a lot of work to do. And also, well, basically for big corporates who would like to work with startups are still looking at them as other corporates are looking at them. And I think, you know, a startup is no corporate, a corporate is no startup, and you should treat them differently. Yeah. And also on the mentoring side, we strongly advise every startup to use mentors. But many of those mentors coming from large corporations still use, well, can I see your business plan as their first question? And we think
even the mentors,
it's totally useless to write a business plan. We strongly believe in business model canvases. We strongly believe that after a few years or after the initial phase, a business plan may be very useful, but not in the initial phase.
Ruud, you just made an interesting point about venture capitalists only investing when there is cash flow available. That really sounds surprising to me. Can you explain why is that? Because that's what I've heard, that actually the banks work that way. Only if there's really cash flow, then they will invest. And I I was thinking, you know, then in the earlier stage, before you have cash flow really in the startup stage,
Yeah.
you would have the venture capitalists to finance the startups.
Yeah, I don't know any venture capitalists, any Dutch venture capitalists that are really investing in startups that are not yet cash flow positive. Well, it's just, I think, a matter of inexperience. They rightly think that investing in startups is very risky. It is risky. I mean, if you take the overall figures, many startups just fail.
Yeah.
But we think that with our accelerator format, that we are able to take a lot of risks out of the whole process. And as a result, we feel that it would be very defendable for a VC to invest in a very early phase like we do ourselves. Banks are a different story. I mean, banks, even if they would like to fund startups or to provide them with loans, I mean, they have to fulfill lots of obligations themselves. I'm a supervisory board member of a bank, a small bank myself. And you know, there are these new demands as a result of Basel III. I'm not sure if you're aware of them. So their solvability has to increase tremendously. As a result, even if they would like to provide loans, it's very hard for them. So we strongly advise every startup not to even go to a bank, because it's useless. It's a total waste of time. Banks will demand business plans, which will take you a lot of time to write, and in the end, they will all say no unless you provide lots of guarantees from your personal holdings or from your family or whatever. So forget the banks, forget the VCs if you're a startup these days, and go to angels and go to maybe smaller communities, crowdfunding, things like that.
Okay. So what still needs to be done? You just said that.
Well, a couple of things. First, the startup community and us as accelerators, and not just Startupbootcamp, but other accelerators, will have to prove for a long-term period that we are able to be very successful and to create return on investment. I mean, if you look at Startupbootcamp, we only started 3 years ago, so our track record is still relatively small. Although, if you take at comparable organizations in the US, I mean, their track record is way longer, and they're very successful. They do the same thing we do, so we are convinced we'll reach the same level of success ultimately. But for the time being, that's not yet the case. Many VCs are also bound to certain shareholder agreements with their investors, so even if they would like to, they can't. But I think it's all a matter of time. I'm an eternal optimist, an incurable optimist. I think that in the end it'll all change, but it may take a while.